Enchanting spices for Issa Kabir has been a unique challenge. On the one hand, spices keep well, and you don't need any magical aptitude to use them in a dish. Enchanting them is a difficult process, however, since their effects can be so layered and complex. I tried many things before I arrived at a solution, which is now safely held in a pouch at my waist. The White Hart is busy when I enter despite how early it is. More people than usual seem to be enjoying food rather than drinks. Servers hurry between tables with bowls and plates. I make my way to the counter and ask for Master Kabir. A few moments later, the server returns and points to the kitchen door. Thank you. Unlike the last time I was here, the kitchen is markedly busier. Markedly busier, yes. Even at this hour, the fires are roaring and the chefs are working hard. I notice Puck, the one with the water affinity, working on an order. He seems tired, and nearby dirty dishes are piled up. Before I have time to ask if he needs any help, Issa appears from somewhere. He too looks like he's been elbows deep in alchemy, but he gives me a happy smile nonetheless. What do you think? As he asks his question, Issa motions at the busy kitchen with pride. Enchanted food, I think it has real potential. He looks for a reaction, so I nod ever so slightly. As far as I can tell, there are only 2 people present who can do any enchanting. It's all thanks to you, Lady Rosencruz. Hardly. Issa ignores my protest and glances hungrily at the pouch hanging from my belt. Now all we need is the final ingredient, the spice. As I take the pouch from my belt, the chefs around us stop working and begin to gravitate towards us. Feeling not unlike a stage magician, I lay the spice on the counter. The crowd gets closer. The spice, however, is entirely unremarkable, without so much as a sparkle. With an audience like this, I cannot help but put on my lecturing voice. The unique challenge when enchanting a spice is deciding what aspect of it to enchant. I could, for example, simply make it more potent. I pick up a single grain of spice to demonstrate, thus requiring less of it to produce the same taste. I put the grain back and theatrically shake my head, but that makes it very easy to use too much and no one wants oversalted or overly spicy food. I look up at the gathered chefs and note that I have their full attention. I could give the spice different properties. Perhaps it could be used to relieve pain, to combat heartburn, or to improve one's digestion. I pick up another grain and stare at it with a slight frown. Useful, but I have a feeling that isn't what Master Kabir wants to accomplish. Especially because there are easier ways to make medicine than enchant in table salt. I put the spice into my mouth and let it dissolve on my tongue. The effect is almost immediate, a new richness comes over my sense of taste. Another option is to create a wholly new flavor by modifying or entirely replacing the original. I shake my head. That is a kind of hubris, isn't it? Thinking you can make something better than nature? Besides, taste is taste, everyone likes different things. The chefs hang on my every word, so I pause, pick up another grain of spice, and turn towards Issa. Finally, it struck me. What is a spice if not the way to bring out a dish's natural flavors? What is a spice if not the way to complement what is already there? I hand the spice to Issa, who silently takes it and stares at me. I nod at him and he puts it in his mouth. As he tastes it, his eyes go wide. Simply put, this enchantment enhances your sense of taste. As such, it can turn even the most basic of palates into that of a gourmet. Some of the chefs look a bit nervous, and I nod as if to confirm their fears. Yes, that means that food spiced with this will need to be of an excellent quality or it will run the risk of being rejected. Just remember to taste test it yourselves before sending it out. I instruct all of the chefs to taste some of the spice, then I go around and taste the food they were making. Some are disgusted and others are excited. Soon, spoons are being carried to and fro for tasting and the whole kitchen is in an uproar. Master Kabir takes me to the side and firmly shakes my hand. Thank you, this will change everything. I grimace. I hadn't mentioned this earlier, but now that we're all alone, I lower my voice to speak. It's actually rather difficult to make. You need a good understanding of both water and light. Puck? He has a natural affinity for water magic, so perhaps with enough training he'll be able to weave light magic as well. But I don't know if you can procure any magic preservation vials. Those without the proper magic affinity will need them. I would offer to bring you some, but it isn't a long-term solution. Issa looks at me for a long moment, then grins. How lucky then that we have just received an invitation from the High Council itself for one apprenticeship in their kitchens. So he did convince them. Weeks ago I sent my father a letter. He said he would try talking with the Department of Food Enchantment, but he also mentioned that I shouldn't get my hopes up. Congratulations! As he shakes my hand again, Master Kabir seems almost teary-eyed, even if he can't stop smiling. Thank you for the taste. I understand now. I look at him, confused. Does he mean the spice? My mother, she would always use that spice, and my grandmother before her. It was a kind of signature for our tavern. I never understood how to use it myself. I tried and tried, but I just couldn't make things that tasted like my mother's cooking. But now I can. He clasps my hands again in his again, as if completely unsure of how else to express his gratitude. I have no doubt that if we were even a little better acquainted, Issa would want to give me a hug. Anytime you want to come around, we'll always have a table for you. Understand? Yes, of course. Are you hungry? Of course you are. When I finally do leave, I do so with a belly full of food and a head full of thanks. Several people enter as I go, all speaking excitedly about the new direction the tavern has been going in. I silently wish Issa good luck. If anyone deserves it, he does. I squint into the darkness, barely able to make out two guards standing up ahead by the gates. The mission had kept me out for longer than expected and drained much of my energy. All I want now is to return to my bedroom as soon as possible, to curl up on the comfortable mattress and get some well-earned rest. As I approach my destination, a short figure comes into sight, heading down the path some distance away. Who would leave the palace at this hour? Curious, I peer with concentration and realize it's Quill. He holds a huge bundle of clothes close to himself. From his gait, it's clear he's struggling with the weight. They forced him into running errands again, at this hour no less. Watching Quill stumbling down the road, almost tripping multiple times from the lack of balance, I rush forward to help him. Before I can take more than 2 steps, however, a firm grip lands on my arm. It's Saren, I can already tell. Taking full advantage of the element of surprise, the assailant covers my mouth with his hand and drags me around the corner in a swift movement. Recovering in a split second, I struggle violently. The magic spell grows hot on my fingertips as I prepare to defend myself. Over my hammering heartbeat, I almost miss the whisper, low and somber. Shh, Valkii, please calm down. Can I press Saren? How do I get rid of the... I want to see the full picture, but I don't know how to get rid of the UI. What is the meaning of this? Despite the confusion, my body minutely relaxes at the familiar sound of his voice, and tenses again when his breath tickles my ear, leaving a numbing shiver. Overly aware of our physical proximity, I find myself holding my breath, frozen and unable to move. Sensing that I'm no longer putting up a fight, Saren slowly releases me. I turn around, feeling the hotness in my cheeks, and I've never been more grateful for the cover of night. What's happening? I was just going to help Quill. Saren's face is a stern mask. He looks more solemn than I've ever seen him before. That is not a good idea right now. Why? He hesitates, seeming to be at war with himself over whether to reply. In the end, he sighs in resignation and speaks. I have detected a living presence hidden within the bundle of clothes that Quill is carrying. It takes me a moment to process what Saren's saying. Stunned, I find myself blurting out an almost foolish response, desperately refusing the implication underlying his words. An animal? No, a human. Certainly. I'm afraid so. I take an unsteady step backwards, reeling from the shock. I don't understand. I do not quite either. We have been following him for a while, waiting to see what he is trying to do. Only then I noticed a few of Saren's personal guards lingering about a foot away, melting into the darkness. I see. Taking a deep breath to regain my composure, I force a weak smile. May I join you? I'm concerned about Quill. All right. Please stay close. I will ensure your safety. Our conversation ends abruptly as we see Quill stumbling past us. In silent agreement, we trail after him, carefully keeping ample distance to avoid getting caught. Is he shoveling Beringer out? You are late. I'm sorry. A long while later, I find myself at the small port with Saren and his guards, crouching to hide behind a large shipment of goods. Peering around the edges of the crates, I try to get a better look at the man Quill is talking to. His voice is oddly familiar, but when I try to draw out the memory, I come up short. Isn't it the Sval? Yeah, I don't know. It looks like him anyway from the silhouette. Nobody noticed you. No. Better so. You know what happens if you fail. Moonlight, pale and clean, falls through the wisps of clouds as the man finally steps out of the shadows, tilting his head in a way that allows me to take a look at his face. No. This can't be right. The shock upon this sight leaves me trembling. Saren, noticing the change, places his hand on my shoulder. What is it? That man, he's the Sval trader I tracked down months ago. That... Are you certain? There's no doubt. I was under the presumption that Nerefiel captured him. I thought so as well. However, after entrusting Beringer to me that day, Neri has been so busy I never got a chance to talk to him. I can only assume his mission didn't go as well as we hoped. The remaining question is, why would Quill seek out this man after my efforts to save the caravan from the slaver and his minions? They exchange a few brief sentences. Then, Quill pulls back the fabrics at the top of the pile, revealing a small, unmoving child. Beringer! I knew it. I jerked towards the scene in a subconscious move. Seren tightens his grasp on my shoulder, keeping me in place. Beringer is alive. I can feel it. Thank goodness. Calming myself, I look around. Behind the Sval, there are 4 shadows, standing neither close nor far. Hired mercenaries, no doubt. Together with Seren and his guards, we can probably take them. However, Your Highness, are there any other presences nearby? Seren closes his eyes, quietly whispering and intently listening to something I cannot hear. 24 more on the ship. Adults or more enslaved children? I'm afraid I cannot tell from here. His lips press into a thin line and I can see him weighing his options, carefully before speaking again. Valkii, wait here. I will go with my guards to check out the ship first. Alright, I'll keep an eye on the situation here. Seren gives me a curt nod, and then I can feel a hard object being pressed into my hand. Looking down, I see a small dagger. Seren wraps my numb fingers around the cold handle, where I can just faintly make out the carving of the royal family's emblem. Just in case. Casting another concerned gaze at me, he turns and discreetly sneaks away with the guards behind him. I remain where I am, watching the events unfold before me with the eyes of a hawk. Quill and the slave trader speak to each other for another minute before the latter pulls something out from his bag. A magic collar. From the looks of it, he's attempting to place it on Beringer to subdue him. How did the trader even get his hands on a magic collar? Not only would it be extremely difficult to remove due to the owner's imprint on it, but it may also choke the victim to death if not handled with care. My eyes dart around for any sign of Seren and his men, even though I know that they've left only minutes ago and would not be back yet. I turn back to the sight before me. The slave trader fumbles with the collar and tries to wrap it around Beringer's neck. No, I have to do something. I can't allow Beringer to suffer this fate on my watch. My grip tightens around the dagger that Seren left me. Mentally murmuring an apology to Seren for breaking my word and making a move without his permission, I spring into action. I dart out from my hiding spot with my weapon in hand, keeping my footsteps as light as possible. Using the shadows as my cover, I sneak towards the closest mercenary standing watch at the dock. He has yet to sense anything amiss, leaning against the wall with an air of carelessness. A mistake he shall pay for with his life. Seren's dagger flies from my hand. It spins through the air, the pale moonlight glinting off the metal for a brief moment. Then it sinks into the mercenary's chest from behind. The pained sound barely wrangles its way out of the man's throat before he collapses to the ground like a broken doll. 1 down, 3 to go. I duck behind another stack of crates out of view. Biding my time, I conjure a new iced weapon for myself. Unfortunately, it doesn't take long for the mercenaries to notice the death of one of their own. Huh? Geralt? What happened? Watch out, we're under attack! At the mercenary's shouted warning, all of the men immediately go on high alert, drawing or holding their weapons higher. Their eyes flit around in the dark, looking for the enemy, looking for me. What? Where? Who? Crouching low and staying close to the ground, I creep forward. The mercenaries are recovering from their panic of being ambushed by an unseen enemy. They start shuffling closer to each other, falling into formation, but their movements are uncoordinated. Too slow. I see an opening. I take it. I slip past one of them silently. As I brush by the mercenary, so does the glistening edge of my saber. I don't stop to watch the blood spill into the night from his slashed throat. I'm on the move again, heading straight for the slave trader. Who is it? Show yourself, coward! Light, we need torches! I keep sprinting, the burn in my lungs and ache in my leg muscles go ignored. 5 feet, 4 feet, 3. Pushing my speed to the limit, I manage to cover the remaining distance between the slave trader and myself without getting discovered. Using the momentum of my dash, I aim at his heart and push my saber forward, intent on ending this fight in one blow. Now! Clang. The slave trader brings his sword up just in time to parry my attack. The collision of our weapons sends a shock running up my arm. His beady eyes focus on mine, a sneer crossing his face. You again. I bite back a curse as I leap backwards. I've lost the element of surprise. This will be much harder from here on out. You have interfered with my business for the last time. I don't bother to respond. I try to keep an eye on the other mercenaries around us, preparing myself for a surprise attack, but they seem to be standing back for now, allowing their leader to take me on alone. The slave trader's sword arcs through the air, directed at my head. I spin out of harm's way and strike back. My hit fails to land, but I manage to buy myself a second to reposition myself. Another attack quickly follows. I jump to the side, dodging the blow. This time, my saber meets his sword head-on, a loud sound echoing in the night. A minute of a struggle for dominance occurs between us before we both part without either gaining much of an edge over the other. At least, as far as he's aware, I have to hold back a wince at the protesting muscles in my arms, my teeth sinking deep into my bottom lip. He gives me no time to recover before launching into another flurry of attacks. I do my best to keep up, twisting out of his sword's path. Sweet. By some miracle, I have avoided any injuries for now, but I'm unsure how long I can continue this. But it doesn't matter, I have to somehow. My energy is rapidly draining. I have already been tired out by my mission today. Then I spent half of the night following behind Quill. I have my limits, both my body and my mind. Despite my best attempts, I cannot find an opportunity to wound him. This can't go on. I cannot achieve a victory like this. I'm not skilled enough in hand-to-hand combat to overpower him. I must find another way. A metallic taste creeps into my mouth as blood seeps from my lip wound, the pain sharpening my mind. Think, Valkii, think. Perhaps tired of watching, one of the mercenaries rushes forward, attempting to take advantage of how preoccupied I am. Thankfully, I've been careful not to let my guard down. I sense his movements as soon as he steps forward. Rolling aside to avoid the blow, I bring my saber with me, slicing through the attacker's right ankle. Ah! The mercenary hits the pavement hard, the scream of pain tearing its way out of his mouth. Shut up, useless scum. Infuriated by yet another failed attempt from his men, the Sval's attacks increase even further in intensity. Already at my limit, I soon find my speed dropping bit by bit, the edges of my vision blurring from overexertion. He brings his sword down on me once again. This time, I can't dodge. Forced to block his attack, the crushing blow proves to be too much for my aching arm to bear. Numbness spreads through the limb. My ice saber slips from my hand, clattering to the ground between us. Time seems to stand still for a moment. Panting, I fall to one knee, trying to prop myself up with my left arm instead of collapsing to the pavement. Finally, you put up a good fight, I'll give you that. Even without looking up at the slave trader's face, I can feel the arrogant gloating from him. Not enough, unfortunately. You have nobody but yourself to blame for believing you're my match. He takes another step closer to me, the taunting sneer blatant in his voice. I stare at the slave trader in front of me, within arm's reach. I react out of pure instinct. Before the thought even forms in my head, an ice dagger materializes in my palm. Slanting the dagger upwards, I push as much force into my movement as possible. The dagger pierces into the slave trader's stomach. A dark spot of red immediately blossoms around the handle. What? He wraps his hand around the hilt of the dagger, his eyes wide with disbelief. Climbing to my feet, I advance towards him, until out of the corner of my eye, I catch a glimpse of a shadow barreling towards me, the last mercenary standing. I duck my head. The mercenary's scythe slashes through the air above me. It creates a sharp gust of wind that sends my hair flying. I waste no time in dispatching of this last enemy, unfazed by the specks of blood splattering on my body. Then I turn back to the slave trader. The Sval has now fallen to the ground in a sitting position, still clutching the dagger buried in his stomach. His own weapon is lying by his side, but I remain a slight distance away, out of reach, just in case. It would be the worst irony to fall to the same move I had just made a minute ago. What were you saying earlier? Oh right, you put up a good fight, I'll give you that. I have more men nearby, you will not make it out alive. Sure, guess we now know who is no match for who. Conjuring another weapon from ice, I dash forward to deliver the killing blow, and freeze as my strength suddenly leaves me. My fist loosens of its own accord, unable to remain its grip around the hilt of my weapon. My knees give way beneath me. I crumple. See, that is not the sound of someone crumpling, that's the sound of someone being, like, slashed. My mind blanks out for a second, then I finally register the tiny nick of pain on my back, accompanied by the paralyzing numbness spreading from the small wound throughout my body. As an alchemist, I'm familiar enough with these effects to know exactly the cause of my predicament. A paralyzer? Quill, why are you a disappointment? I roll my eyes upwards, straining to see above me, and I'm greeted by the sight of Quill, a small knife in his hand still pointing at me. Far too late, my mind flashes back to the scenario a few weeks ago when the group of servants was accusing Quill of theft. The passing thought I had about the paralyzer missing from my alchemy cabinet. The very one Quill is holding. I should have realized. Without even giving me a second glance, Quill walks calmly to the unconscious Beringer. He picks up the child and turns towards the slave trader. Go, before it's too late. Have you seen the state I'm in? Reckon I can carry a child? The slave trader winces and struggles to get up, continuing to apply pressure to the wound to staunch the bleeding. He grabs his sword off the ground, the sharp blade dragging across the rocks with a squeal. Go. I will, after I get rid of this trouble first. Footsteps become louder until they stop right by my ear. I can only lie motionless on the ground, fighting against the spots of darkness bleeding into my vision and threatening to take control. What do you mean? This one has caused me trouble far too many times. First, raiding my caravan and killing my best mercenaries. Then, her little friend attacked another shipment and almost caused me to lose that Rosencruz child. Now this. I'm going to put an end to this once and for all. What? You want to kill her? No. Shock and horror creep into Quill's voice as he protests. I wonder if I should take slight comfort in the fact that he at least doesn't want me dead. You can't. You promised me that nobody will get hurt. Don't tell me what to do and what not to do, child. A hot drop of blood lands on my face as the slave trader stands over me. I would wrinkle my nose in distaste, but not a single muscle in my body is listening to me. Guess the victory belongs to me after all. No! I can feel the slave trader lift his sword high above his head. Every part of me is screaming for me to get out of the way of the crushing danger, but I can't. The only thing I can do is squeeze my eyes shut so I don't have to see it coming. This is it. After everything, this is how it's all going to come to an end. Curiously, Seren's face swims to the front of my mind. I idly wonder how the prince will receive the news of my death, and I greatly pray that he will not be the one to find my body when he returns. I'm sorry, Seren. Goodbye. Seren! I brace myself for the impact and inevitable pain, but instead a blinding light surrounds us, glaringly bright even behind my closed eyelids. My eyes fly open without thinking. A mistake, as I'm unable to make out anything in the world of white. And then I recognize the light, the familiar warmth and comfort of light magic that I've seen from Seren countless times. Seren, he's back. Hope and a feeling of safety wash over me, and if I could sag in relief, I would have. He must have used light magic to blind the slave trader. With the mercenaries taken care of, perhaps he can defeat the wounded slave trader alone. No sooner has the thought crossed my mind when the light suddenly disappears. Ha, you think that will blind me? Think again. Unfathomable darkness falls abruptly, like a cloak that had been whipped over our heads. My eyes struggling to adapt to the quick change, I can only stare blindly ahead as I attempt to make sense of what's going on. How did Seren's light magic get cancelled? Could the slave trader possess an affinity for darkness magic? If that's the case, sounds of a struggle ensue. Panic wells up inside me, but my temporary blindness is taking a frustratingly long time to fade. Then I hear the sound of flesh being penetrated by a sharp object, followed by a pained grunt, too faint for me to make out who is the source of the sound. Loud footsteps. A dozen men hurriedly trampled to where we are, causing the ground beneath me to tremble. Your Highness, we rushed here as soon as... Seize them. Still unable to see, my sense of hearing is increased by tenfold. The commotion of the battle is almost deafening, yet amidst it all, I can make out the sound of Quill's hysterical crying and desperate apologies. I'm sorry, I didn't want to. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. It's alright, it is over now. It's not alright. Valkii, I paralyzed her, she almost died, and you're injured, and... Seren's injured. Blinking furiously, and perhaps due to my sure will, my sight finally returns. Slowly, Seren's figure appears in front of me, as does the blood dripping down his face from his left eye. No. He has one hand pressed against his eye, blocking the view from sight. I can't tell how bad the injury is. My chest tightens and an indescribable fear, different and nearly more acute than earlier when I was an inch away from death, takes a hold of me. Despite my frantic desire to take a closer look at Seren's injury, the effects of the paralyzer can no longer be ignored. My grip on my consciousness finally fails me. Alertness gradually returns to me bit by bit. It's an odd sensation, as though I'm being dragged out of the murky depths 1 inch at a time. As my mind slowly begins working again, I become aware of this aching sense of weakness plaguing my body. My limbs feel like they've been replaced by wooden logs weighing 100 tons, and I give up on any intention of moving them. It takes immense effort for me to even force my eyes to flutter open. As soon as I do, I'm hit by a wave of regret. Nausea makes me press my lips tightly together, preventing the bile from leaving my throat. Valkii, you're awake. Joy rushes through me at the sound of Seren's soft voice. Fighting against my body's stiffness, I push myself into a sitting position and turn my head to look at him. Seren is sitting by my bed. Next to him, there's someone that appears to be a healer, along with several servants, who must have rushed forward upon hearing that I'm awake. However, I don't pay them any heed. My attention is fully drawn by the sight of Seren, and the bandages around his head covering his left eye. I open my mouth, but no sound comes out. Just as well, because I'm not certain any words would be adequate to express the violent chaos of emotions inside me. Seren's injured, and it's all my fault. Perhaps it's his light magic at work, or perhaps my feelings are just written all over my face right now. Either way, Seren senses my turmoil, and he dismisses the servants with a polite order. When we are left alone in the room, Seren speaks to me with a reassuring smile. Reaching out, he places a hand on my head and begins stroking gently. Please, Valkii, you must stay calm. Everything is all right. Beringer is perfectly fine. He slept through everything and has received no lasting injuries or effects. I stare back at him blankly. He grows quiet at my lack of reaction. His hand pauses in their soothing motions for a moment, revealing that he's at a loss for what to do. It takes a few attempts for my tongue to work properly. My voice comes out scratchy and hoarse, wavering with a note of vulnerability that I would normally be embarrassed by. If Beringer is fine, how about you? Seren blinks. A faint smile touches his lips, but I feel no better at the sight. I am in perfectly good health, or else I would not be allowed by the healers to be here. Perhaps this might have fooled me months ago when I had not known him as well. Now, knowing the subtle signs to watch out for, I can clearly read the sorrow in his features, hidden deep within his green eye. He has blue eyes, what? I want to ask about his injury, whether his other eye has any hope of recovering, but I don't think I dare to. I'm afraid of the answer. As if sensing my thoughts, Seren moves his hand to my cheek, caressing it. Don't worry. Aurelius and Sala has taken care of my injury. Their efficiency with water magic will help me heal within the next week. This will leave nothing but a scar. At this, I feel the immense pressure on my mind finally lifting. Yet the relief lasts for but a moment before the feeling of guilt threatens to swallow me whole. I was the reason he got hurt. He must have sensed that I was in danger and rushed ahead of his guards to get back in time to save me. His magic isn't offensive like Nazir's. He was at a heavy disadvantage, and he knew it. Yet he still fought the slave trader. Because of me, to protect me. My lips tremble at the thought. I cannot help but wonder, what if we weren't so lucky? What if Aurelius and Sala weren't able to heal his eye? It is my fault. Why? Seren speaks up, cutting short my increasingly self-loathing train of thoughts. How are you feeling? Should I leave you to rest? I thought you would want to see me after waking up, but if I was mistaken. You're not. Stay, please. He hesitates, then nods. I will. Silence falls over us. Seren continues slowly caressing me, his motions slow and soothing. For a moment, I'm afraid to meet his eye, scared of finding blame in its depths. But when I finally gaze at him, I find only relief. What is this cat doing? And dare I say, quiet affection, albeit shadowed by melancholy and worry. Just like that, my mind quietens. The stray thoughts of what could have and should have happened leave me. We remain like this for a few minutes, listening to each other breathe, reassured by each other's presence alone. Eventually, Seren breaks the quiet in the room with clear reluctance. I believe you need to hear this. The court has given the order to publicly execute the slave trader we captured, and Quill. At the mention of Quill, my already heavy heart sinks further. The thoughts I've been trying to keep at bay return with a feather, and I frown. Right. I suppose I'm not surprised at that. I wish to spare Quill, but the court does not agree. Irritation creeps into Seren's voice, and he lets out a sigh. I spoke to Quill after what happened. It turns out that his family is not all gone. He has one sister who luckily survived, but was being held hostage by the slave trader. He was forced into bringing Beringer to the Saval, if he wanted his sister to remain alive. Then he is but a victim. The knot in my chest loosens as I mull over Seren's words. Understanding and empathy for the child eventually went out over my own pain of his betrayal. The court knows of this, yet they still wish to execute him. Yes, I tried to reason with the court, but I couldn't change their judgment. My brows knit together. This punishment is too severe. But Quill is also a victim. He's only a young child who got unwillingly caught up in the Sval's schemes. I was told that it does not matter who is responsible and what the reason is. The only fact that matters is the heir to the throne was hurt. His hands lift from his lap towards his eye, stopping midway before it reaches its destination. Guilt and frustration flash across his face. If I refuse to execute Quill, I will lose the noble's respect. I am sure you are aware of the quiet boycott and protests rumbling among the nobles. I cannot allow or provide a reason for it to worsen. Sorry, the cat just jumped up on me. Your uncle, your brothers, for sure they do not accept this. They do not. Yet, the Regency Council, the only faction that has fully supported me so far, is against our decision. What do you want? They claim my father would have had the child executed and will not stand behind a royal family that makes weak decisions. Can you not suppress them? Each of the lords holds a considerable amount of military power, and they are not against combining them. Isn't that a blatant threat of rebellion? I don't know. Even if we manage to suppress them, the loss of lives will be... Seren's voice cracks, now barely above a whisper. This cat. She doesn't realize that her sitting on me... that her sitting on me will just make her warmer. I don't know what to do. Hello, kitten. Mwah. He repeats the same 5 words again and again, his head drooping lower and lower until it falls into his palms. For the first time since I've met the prince, his composure is completely lost. He looks defeated, hunched over in his chair, his shoulders trembling slightly. I have to strain to hear his quiet murmuring under his breath. This cat is being frantic, wanting pets right now. Just like right up near my face. From early on, I knew that as the future ruler, there will be times I have to make decisions that go against my conscience. Yet, why is it that my path must be forged with the blood of a child? Why am I helpless to stop it? No matter how much I give, how much I try, it's not enough. I feel a hot sting prick at my eyes, and I clench my hands into fists, feeling anger stew inside me until it nearly reaches a breaking point. All of this, is too much to bear. Seren's injury, Quill's imminent execution, all because of the acts of one selfish man with no respect for human life. This is too unfair for words. None of this should have happened. The tears finally make their escape, trickling down my cheeks and leaving behind salty trails that burn my skin. I press my fist over my mouth, trying to hold in a sob. Despite my attempts to stay silent, Seren's head snaps up immediately. The next thing I know, I'm surrounded by warmth and a distinct husky smell. I freeze in shock. It takes me a moment to realize that Seren has swept me into an embrace, holding me with a mixture of intensity and tenderness. I apologize. I apologize for crossing the line, but please, allow me this just for a moment. I don't respond out loud. Instead, I wrap my arms around him, silently indicating my agreement. Neither of us move. For a long time, we stay intertwined in each other's arms, taking comfort in each other. For a short time, we're almost, but not quite, convinced that everything will turn out fine. Alright, I'm gonna see you in the next video. Bye!